Does it get resolved? Do we finally win? No. We constantly have to be at it. We constantly have to be protesting, have to be working. And I think your going to college is a form of a search of saying that you want to get better educated so you can be better at this. Right. Salem were a bunch of white teenage girls, young women. And in New York, this was a group of Black, free, and enslaved people. And the crucial difference is when you round up and arrest a bunch of white young women, that makes the history books. And when you torture and round up and persecute and prosecute, Black slaves and free, that somehow disappears in American history. We started, those of you who just joined, we started with this discussion of Tiffany raising the question of how will we use history, or how does history inform us about our daily life in New York today? Tiffany, tell me if I'm getting you wrong. And a follow-up point that Tiffany raised was, can there be change, or has there been change, or will there be change in this inequality? Tiffany, how did I do with your two questions? Am I okay with those? Are those the two? Did I summarize it well?
Yes, for the most part.
What's that?
I said yeah, for the most part.
You want to add something to that in terms of the "for the most part" phrase? What did I leave out, or correct me, please?
Oh, my initial question was just if by the end of class, the history of New York will tie into present day New York, like the present times that we're living in currently.
Right, and then you followed it with a question about change, right?
Yes, because you mentioned that there are still historical issues presently taking place today, and one of the issues that are still not has still not been resolved has been with the whole racial inequality and segregation in some form.
Right. So what I'm saying is that everything we're learning, uh, some of it you will have, and I will have an aha moment, which is, oh my, that does tie into present day New York. And I was looking at purposive brutality in question 5B as an example of something that we're looking at now that for me, I had this aha moment that ties into police brutality today. And does it get resolved? In other words, does the inequality get resolved? Does, does change happen? From my experience as a historian, picking up what Atta was saying, there are small victories, but that protest must continue, and that there is no end to this. It's something that everybody, all of us, have to continue to fight for, and there's no end to it. There's no moment where we say, okay, we're done now. As soon as you let down your guard, as soon as you stop protesting and fighting for your rights, then inequality will come back. And so it's not like plateauing, like we suddenly achieve. It's that it's always got to be on your mind, and it always has to be a battle, and it always has to be something that we're fighting for, whether it be individually in our own families, whether it be individually in our own communities, whether it be individually in our own city. So these battles, these small victories, these protests are not just walking the streets of New York with signs. It's not just calling your politician. Of course, these are important, but it's daily. It's daily for you in your own community, in your own families, in your own groups, with your friends. This is not something you can, if, in terms of the battle for justice, this isn't something you sort of say, oh, okay, we're done. You're not done. You're never done. And I talk about this as a historian and as an individual who's lived for many years, that I was in the 1960s, I was very active coming out of college in the protest movement, and I was arrested and I was, tear gassed, and we accomplished a lot in the 60s. We did. But then it comes back. It comes back. You got to keep fighting. So that's sort of my contribution to these questions of what is there in history that ties into the present. Well, I think in question 5A, this purposive brutality ties in directly. And does it get resolved? Do we finally win? No. We constantly have to be at it. We constantly have to be protesting, have to be working. And I think your going to college is a form of a search of saying that you want to get better educated so you can be better at this, and that you can write better, you can speak better, you can be more intelligent, you can be more intellectually curious. I think coming to LaGuardia is a statement by every one of you that you want to be part of this movement towards justice. So does anybody want to jump in on that in terms of your point of view? Yes.
I wanted to ask, actually, I wanted to hear more about how you said you were protesting back then. Like, I'm like very much interested in that. Like where and like what for exactly?
All right. Well, Carmela, send me an email or something, and I'll send you all a picture of me with my long hair and my beard, and
Were you straight like flower powering it back there?
All right, so you're pushing me.
Okay.
Feel the push. Okay. So I was part of the student movement in the 60s for equality, which in my protesting was against the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And we would periodically get on buses down at Washington Square and go to Washington, D.C., and go to the Pentagon and go to the White House and go to Congress and protest the war in Vietnam. And my reference to being tear gassed was when we marched on the Pentagon and they tear gassed us. And my reference to being in jail was when I was drafted and I was resisting the draft. I was followed by the FBI, and then I was arrested and put in jail for not for protesting the war. And so I was fingerprinted and the whole thing. I feel that in part we won. We had lots of legislation passed for equality. We had the Civil Rights Act. We did eventually the war ended. So that's a brief summary.
I mean, as far as this, and then we'll be done with it. But I just wanted to suggest maybe like a film to anybody who wants to like watch. It's called Across the Universe, and it's kind of a musical-ish thing, but it's based on that time period and the war, and what like everybody was doing back then for that in New York, actually. And so like it's based on like these kids that were a part of this, and one of the characters actually was drafted, and he just ignored the draft and went and protested and like was kind of rogue for a while.
And it's all great Beatles music. So
yes, yeah, it's like amazing Beatles music that go behind it. But it's an amazing film. I think it's exactly like what you were talking about, actually. So
Did you send us the link in the chat?
Yeah, I would love to.
Well, the Beatles were very important to us in the protest. Music was very important to us in the protest movement. We would sing on the buses. When we partied together, the Beatles music was very important to us because it was music of protest. So I'm very connected to what you're saying. Anybody else want to contribute to this discussion before we get to the questions on back to the questions on everybody's muted again? What happened, Oleg? It self-mutes periodically, right?
It's rules, you know, it's everybody muted. It's rules.
People are individually muting themselves?
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in on this before we get back to, I think we had left off with the presentation of group 3 on question 6. But I don't want to stop this discussion because it's so important, what the issues that Tiffany raised. Anybody else want to jump in before we go back to the questions? Are we good?
I think it was like very important for that to happen.
Say that again?
I think it was important in order for this to happen, but even though it happened, it still has a major part in today's world.
A major part in what?
It still has a major part in the world of today.
Yes. And that's the key to protest, that you don't know how it will ripple into affecting everybody else. You don't know when you're protesting which pieces of it will get there and get to somebody. And that's why protesting exists here and legislation and policy exists here. And they affect each other. And you don't know when you're protesting really how much impact you're going to have. You go on faith, really. Okay, we ready to go back to question 6? I think it was group 3. Who represented group 3?
That was Daisy and I believe, yeah.
Okay, so Oleg, would you put page, split this?
It was question 6, right?
It's question 6. We're on 98A is what we want to look at on page,
page 17.
The problem, of course, was exactly the opposite. So Oleg, could you put that up on the screen? And while he's doing that, I want to officially welcome Oleg back to the class. Okay, group 3, go ahead. What did you say about this?
Well, basically they were getting in trouble for just like things that weren't even that criminal in a sense. So they were being targeted. It says that they were just committing minor crimes, forming gangs and meeting surreptitiously, trading on the black market, frequenting taverns. So they're just really just not doing things that are too like with a criminal aspect.
So what would be 3 examples, and take a minute to look at that paragraph, of this rebelling every day, of the statement that Black people were rebelling every day against slavery? What would be 3 examples?
One of them is they're going to taverns, I guess, to drink. They're visiting each other, and they're meeting surreptitiously, so like in private, secretly.
And so it all comes around this gathering, in part feeding upon the paranoia of the white community that maybe they're planning something, right?
Right, but you just find out that, you know, they're just acting as the other poor white people were acting, and that's why they were able to actually ally with them, because they were under the same stress, you know.
Well, although they were acting the same as those white people in the same economic group,
they were seen differently.
What's that?
They were seen differently.
They were seen differently. And getting back to Tiffany's question, do you think that's true today?
Yeah, of course. We see it all the time. We saw it just a few days ago. For a simple traffic stop, you know, someone gets killed, but if he were a white man, it would obviously go much different. So it's It's those things that haven't even changed.
Right,
Like
right.
he was asking, right? But it's true.
It's true. It's true. And so this,
There have been some advancements, but at the end of the day, it's like you still have people whose minds you can't change, you know.
Ivan, just to give us some hope, what advancement are you thinking of?
Like legislation, like things that are passed that, you know, like African Americans can vote now and they have more legal representation in court. But at the end of the day, you can't change like racist people's minds or their acting or their policies, you know. But on a federal level, it has advanced a bit, but it's not like they're still
Right,
getting treated the same. So
right. So what we can say is we've traveled along this road, we've made some accomplishments, but we've got a long way to go and we shouldn't be satisfied.
correct.
And I do. Okay, nice work, nice work. Group four, Oleg, could we go to page 18? What happened in April 370 years ago?
Yeah.
Are you on
When,
page 18? Yeah.
yeah, during the spring,
Page 18. This is question 7, and it's during the spring of 1741. Yeah. Okay. Who will speak for group 4?
I will.
All right, Jason, go ahead. What's your summary statement in your own words of what happened in April 370 years ago in New York City?
Okay. So this is what I put as my answer. There was a robbing spree in New York, and many people started to assume that it was the slaves. Since they didn't have great technology back then, it was just based off accusations, which was really unfair. So there was a conspiracy going around that there was a riot about to happen called the Great Negro Plot, and then white people started to capture slaves because of that, over
And
like accusations and conspiracy.
what was at the heart of the accusations, and what was at the heart of the plot that the white population believed in, going back to the other question, what was happening in these meetings and was happening in these taverns? What was the big fear?
That the slaves were gonna take over. So the slaves were gonna rebel, and that really scared like the people in power. And because of that,
Rebel, take over, and do what? I'm pushing you. I'm pushing you.
wait,
What
can
was
you repeat that?
Look, they're meeting in these taverns, right? They're having these
Mhm.
meetings, according to the whites. Poor, what were they plotting? What were they meeting about? What was the whites accusing the black population of plotting?
A riot.
More than a riot. Anybody else want to jump in? More than a riot.
Did I miss something?
It's in the first sentence. During the spring of 1741, you see the first
Fires?
sentence? What's that?
Fires?
Fires. Who said that?
Tiffany.
Fires. It's a wooden city, and the rumor mill, the conspiracy mill, the racist mill, the fear was that this, going back to the earlier statement, these meetings in the taverns were plots to burn down New York. And so what was the reaction to that? What was the reaction to the Great Negro Plot? They rounded up who? Jason.
They rounded up 150 slaves along with 25 whites.
Right. They just round up people, right, and accuse this group of plotting to burn down New York. Thank you. All right, group 5, question 8A, B, and C. Mary Burton, Who was she, and what was the result of her testimony? Group 5, question 8. Mary became the star witness.
Yeah, Mary Burton, she was a star witness, and she basically snitched that like there was this white couple of a tavern that they didn't have like a good reputation, and she basically like ratted them out as having like harbored slaves who were rebelling.
And is she believed?
Well, yeah, I'm assuming they did, because in the next paragraph,
Yeah,
they said that they were, all of them were executed.
yeah. You're getting into the next question, but who was Mary Burton, by the way?
She was a teenage indentured servant.
Right. You remember what indentured meant?
Yeah, they're not slaves. They're just working a debt off.
Yeah. 7 years to work off the debt. Okay, thank you very much. Group 6, question 9. We started to answer it already. The brutal summer of 1741. Thus began a brutal summer. Who's here from group 6?
I'm here.
All right, Pedro, take it away. Ole.
Okay, so basically, that summer, by a journalist named Roy Otley, was called the biggest lynching in history of America.
Say it again. Say it again.
During that summer, a journalist named Roy Otley called it the biggest lynching in history of America.
Let me just stop you right there. This is so important. This is, and you should write this down or just remember, this is the biggest lynching in American history, and no one in this classroom, no member of your family, no member of anybody you know has ever heard of this. You got to think about that. You got to think about what happens to this type of history. It gets buried. All right? I mean, it's just powerful to think about this. I'm sorry to interrupt, Louis.
It was called that because a death sentence was issued almost every single day, and the execution was carried out every week during that whole summer.
Unbelievable. What was your personal reaction to that as you read it?
I didn't even know that it just happened.
Unbelievable. And as you read it, what did you think about in terms of your own personal reaction to reading this?
I was shocked.
Yeah. And let me ask you, Pedro, sorry to push you on this.
All right.
Had you heard about the Salem witch trials?
Yeah, I heard about those.
Everybody's heard about the Salem witch trials. And why is it, Pedro, that everybody's heard about the Salem witch trials and no one's heard about the biggest lynching in the history of America? Why?
Because the Salem witch trials was, I don't know, it was pretty dumb because they the whole witches thing, and this is pretty, I don't know, evil, like with all the lynchings happening.
I totally agree, but why has the Salem witch trials made it into the American history books, and this lynching, this rounding up, this execution of people on a daily basis, this burning of people, this dragging people through the streets, Black people, why has this been buried and the other been launched as an important moment in American history, and this no one's heard of? What's the crucial element in the difference between the two? Anybody?
They were white, not Black.
You got it. Everybody hear that? Ivan, say it again.
They were white girls, they weren't black.
Right. Salem were a bunch of white teenage girls, young women. And in New York, this was a group of black, free, and enslaved people. And the crucial difference is when you round up and arrest a bunch of white young women, that makes the history books. And when you torture and round up and persecute and prosecute, black slaves and free, that somehow disappears in American history. And it's the job of guys like me, historians, to say, no more will that happen. We have to know the true past of this country's history and of the history of our city. And what shocks you that it takes place in, of all places, New York? Anybody? What gets to you in terms of it taking place right here in our town?
That for such
Say again?
such atrocities took place historically in New York City. That's what gets me.
Did that surprise you?
Yes, it did.
And what do you want to tell others now, tonight, tomorrow, about New York's past?
They should be more aware of it and not view it as the liberal place that it has always, like, it hasn't always been liberal and progressive and welcoming to all people in all walks of life, from all walks of life.
And maybe it still isn't.
So yes, but it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's not as it's not out there. Like, it's not as, like, people aren't as outspoken, I guess, as before. Because I think if something like this were to take place today, there would be more of a uproar, and there would be more of a like I'm pretty sure there would be more people fighting back and trying to bring the people that are responsible for such a crime to justice.
I think that's what Atta was saying earlier. Atta, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what you were getting at before. But there was somebody else who wanted to jump in. I heard a voice. Was there somebody else who wanted to jump in on this? Let me push you a little bit, Tiffany, on what you're saying. What is the difference between what happened in 1741 and today, living with the most segregated school system in the country? What do you see as the difference? Or what do you see as similar?
Can I say something?
What's that?
I wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
About that. Oh, okay.
I think the audio is having problems with you, is it?
No. Basically, like, I actually did I don't know if anyone was in the same like English course like 2 semesters ago, but one of the professors made us write about the not segregation, but the school problem in New York City, and how New York City has one of the most like segregated schools, and they don't even like, it's not even like a thing where it's like they're like, oh, no white people, no black people can come here, no white people come here. It's like very much under the books, to the point where it's like super unfair that like you can't really get out of it. It's like the whole private school institutions too, where they make these schools that are like all the money goes into these schools, and all the private institutions get all the money, and all the schools in the lower districts, they get like no funding, and then these students can't like go and progress in the way that they would if they got the right education. and it's becoming the gap between the two is becoming like bigger and bigger as like the time goes by, because there's not a lot of reform on it. Like they also send like, okay, there's the thing that I saw was like they sent like police to like go in the like lower district schools, and they almost like look for trouble to like make it like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like they like something that would be normal at the white predominantly white schools is actually like a crime or something. They criminalize it at the like, you know, mostly minority schools in New York, and like it's they haven't had much of a change about it, and even though like, you know, a lot of parents try to like make it better, it's just like the whole private institution thing like really screws with the system.
Carmela, let me jump in and say the place that's bringing about, getting back to what Atta was saying, what Tiffany was saying, the place that's bringing about change are places like LaGuardia Community College.
Yeah.
If I'm just going to say this, and I'll just say it, that in the story we're writing of taking from the 1741 atrocities and coming to the present day and saying, aha, you know, this has a history. Well, then how will we bring about change in what you're talking about? A place that has allowed us, a place that has permitted us to bring about this change in education and equality is LaGuardia Community College and City University of New York. And I would say this, I know it's going to sound self-serving, I would take the faculty that you're facing at LaGuardia, I would put them up against a faculty at Harvard, at Yale.
Easily.
We got them.
No, easily. I feel like this school is definitely it does like the opposite of what that whole pattern is that we're getting an amazing education.
And that's why I've stayed here for 50 years.
Yeah.
That's why I've turned down offers from Columbia or NYU, or all of these other places, because I don't want to be at those places.
Well,
this is the place to be. This is the place where you can bring about change.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I went to a university, like a large university in Hawaii, and like I did not get half as much help or attention from my professors than I have at LaGuardia. Like my grades suffered over there. They only cared about the money. But in LaGuardia, like I genuinely have been more, what's the word? Active within my classes and stuff, because the teachers care. Like the professors actually help a lot.
I'll tell you something else, that most of our faculty, including myself, come out of that spirit of protest for equality. And what you're sensing in terms of our caring is that we really do feel we can bring about change this way. We really feel passionately about that. And let's go to group 7, because it relates to what we're talking about. Group 7, you want to take us home on this? Oleg, go to page 19, please. And page 19, we're looking at the top paragraph, the peculiar partnership between a servant girl and a judge. Okay, group 7, where are you?
I think I was group 7. Not sure.
Okay.
I was.
What was the legacy to our city? Oh, it's a perfect question for you, Tiffany. And why? I think a lot of this we've really answered already, but why don't you give us the summary statement? Look at the question and look at this paragraph and then take us home.
So I think it had to do with the conspiracy of a judge and a servant girl's relationship, or a peculiar partnership, which means an odd relationship. And that led to it says that it showed that New York was at war with itself, meaning that whites were against blacks and the rich were against the poor, which to me basically means the same thing because white people hold majority of the wealth. So I don't know why they differentiated that when it's basically the same thing. And then it says that also people from different religious beliefs and backgrounds were also at war against each other. And it states in the last sentence that the diversity that was New York's unique strength also could become its weakness when marred by inequality and intolerance.
You believe that?
I do believe that.
And give me one example in your own life that supports that. You don't
That
have
supports.
that supports that statement in terms of the diversity of that was the diversity that we celebrate in New York that we see as our strength could also be seen as becoming a weakness when it's marred by inequality and intolerance. So give me an example, either in your life, a friend's life, your parents' life, of inequality and intolerance.
Well, I personally wouldn't, I don't have any personal examples, but I guess I would say that I acknowledge my privilege in a sense because of the neighborhood that I was born in, and I had no choice over what neighborhood I was born into. That was something that my parents made, and I do acknowledge how I had a better education than some people do simply because I was born into a certain neighborhood. So I could see how that inequality is exasperated based off of certain populations that can afford to put their children into private institutions.
So Daisy, you want to jump in and give an example?
Yeah, example would be like in the present day, like when COVID started happening, basically everyone could afford to stay home and work from home did, and everyone who else that couldn't, that like made minimum wage jobs, became essential workers, and they basically didn't matter to people outside because it's like you chose to be an essential worker even though the majority of people didn't choose to do that. And some of us were faced with like a lot of uncertainties, and like a lot of people had to get their own help because government assistance wasn't going to be enough for them. And it's like it's always the same people that were looking for help as people that were making like minimum wage jobs and were paid a lot less than other people. And it's like the classism was there and existed, and the same thing happened with Asians, and Asians were being attacked and stuff like that.
Yeah. And also I want to add to that if you look at who's getting the vaccine and who's getting sick, you see the inequality very clearly.
Yeah, 100%.
What's that?
I thought with the whole vaccine situation, I read an article that stated that minority groups are less trusting of the government, and that's the reason for the I guess that's like a reason why not as many are getting vaccinated.
I feel like that's not necessarily true because I know a lot of people that are minorities, and the majority that I know are vaccinated. And it's like, it's not that we don't want to get vaccinated, it's the lack of resources there are for us to get vaccinated. And it's hard because everyone that I know that where I work at, it's a doctor's office. Everyone that I know that is vaccinated, it's an older white person that's vaccinated. And it's always going to be white people are going to be more vaccinated than Hispanics or any other minority race because they have more access to it than other people do. And depending where they live, it's like it's easier for you to get a vaccination than other people are. Because I know people that literally go all the way to the Bronx just to get vaccinated, and they live in Queens.
So the legacy of inequality, the legacy of the 1741 plot and revenge and brutality lives on in New York in part as we see it today. What I want to do, it's now, I think we have time. Oh, like, do we have time to see the video? I think it's 10 minutes, right? Before we take a break. Oleg, are you there?
It's 1:44 right now, so we have time, I think.
We have time. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're about to see is a video that summarizes everything we've been talking about this class and the class before this. We're starting, Oleg, at counter 3150 and going to, for 10 minutes to, oh, we're starting, I'm sorry, 34, right? And we're going to 4130, right?
3150 you told. You want a 34?
No, start at 3150 because that begins with the British. Yeah,
Okay.
let's start with 3150 and we'll go to 4130, 10 minutes, and then we'll take a break. Those of you watching the video, take notes on examples you can use in answering these 10 questions we're working on. So your job is to watch the video and take some notes on any examples that get to you and you find interesting that you want to use in your writing. So let's take 10 minutes to view the video, and then we'll take a break. Okay, Oleg, hope the audio is good.
I hope to.
Well, this is the image. This is what I wanted to show you. It says 1,000 words of the guy who was protesting, who was out on the streets, who was getting tear gassed, who was being arrested.
Woo!
This answers your question of in terms of what was I doing in terms of protest? Where was I? It looks like a credit card. This was the LaGuardia Community College ID when I was first hired. This is 1972. I'm 27. I'm going to be 27 years old at that point. I'm 26 going on 27. And it was my first year at LaGuardia, almost 50 years ago.
Why is it destroyed?
Why is it destroyed? What do you mean?
Yeah. It looks like it has tape just barely holding on to it.
Yeah, I put the tape there. They weren't giving us new IDs. We had to sort of hold on. We had to hold on to these IDs. So
You should hang that up somewhere in the hallways of LaGuardia.
That's your.
I want this framed. I want this framed and like in like a story thing for like my guests. You know, I want to put it on my
Needs to be
wall.
in a museum.
Like I want to put this on a wall, and then when people ask me why, I'm gonna be like, let me tell you about a story about my professor that will stick to me forever. Like at a dinner party, this will be like a story time thing.
All right. What is that black box that keeps coming around? Oh, there it is. Okay. So there's the image. There's the protest image. There's the tie-in to who's teaching this class. There's the tie-in to my tradition of wanting to fight for equality and justice. And I'm telling you, LaGuardia is the place to be for a guy like me. It really is. And it's a place to be for you all too, in terms of this constant battle against what I would say started before 1741, but certainly still exists. Okay, Oleg's ready to show you the movie. And this is a summary movie which covers all 10 questions. So take notes on the movie in terms of examples you want to use in your answers. All right, Oleg, take us away. So I'm going to put you in groups. I'll visit each group. We have how many students, Oleg?
We have 16 students.
Okay, so we have 8 groups of 2. Oleg will put you into 8 groups of 2. And this is what I want you to do. Look at the 10 questions in your group. Pick the one question that you really want to write about. And I've told you this before, that good writing has to do with being turned on to writing what you want to write about. So among the two of you, pick out the one question that you agree you really want to write about it. Then what you have to do and talk to each other about it is come up with the 3 examples you're going to use in your answer. So you talk to each other about the 3 examples. Then you talk to each other about 2 thoughts you're having about this question, about the examples, and use one thought to introduce the paragraph and the second thought to end it. And in between, you give your examples and you work together and then write your answer and come back to class, come back to our larger group. So the assignment, I'll visit each group to repeat this, but the assignment is simple. You're going to be in small groups, meaning 2. You're going to pick of the 10 questions. You should all have the 10 questions. If you don't, we can send them to you. Pick the one question that the 2 of you agree on is the one you really want to write about. And then talk to each other about the 3 examples you're going to use from the reading. And then thoughts that you have, and introduce it with one of your thoughts and end it with your second thought. And then I want you to do the writing right now in class and come back when both of you have written the answer to that question. And these answers should be emailed to me and I'll be grading these answers. And it's one less question to do for homework. Okay? So Oleg, put everybody into groups. It's 10 after 2 and bring everybody back in 15 minutes at 2:25. I think 15 minutes is enough time. If it's not enough time, then we'll find out. But let's try doing this in 15 minutes. Okay, Oleg, so you know the groups, put them into the groups that we talked about.
Yeah, I did. Okay.
Okay, I'll be visiting you all. Did you all finish your work? Did you all have enough time to write your answers and send it to me?
Yeah.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Yes, Professor.
I'm picking up and sending it now.
Send it to me. So all.
About to send it right now, Professor.
Right, we've got 16 students, so I should get 16 answers to the question that you picked as a group, right? And you talk to each other, you pick the question that you wanted to write about, you pick 3 examples, you talk to each other about the thinking, you wrote about your thoughts, and you send it to me, right? Anybody have questions on that, on what we're up to here? Everybody good?
Oh,
Hello? Everybody hear me? Am I muted?
no.
I'm good.
We're good.
You good?
We're good.
All right. So now
I'll give
on
my answer in a minute, Professor. I'm almost done.
Okay. So now on your own, in the next, we've got 14 minutes left of this class, and you've just experienced answering this question with a partner and learning. In the next 14 minutes, on your own, pick another question to do this using the same method. In other words, pick any question you want, find 3 examples to support your answer, think about what your thoughts are, and get it to me by 3 o'clock. So now at the end of this class, you will have done 2 of the 10 questions. So there are remaining 8 questions. I only want you to do 4 of them for homework. Does everybody hear me? I don't want you to do the other 8. I want you to do 4 of the 8, and I want you to pick after class the 4 questions that really get to you, the 4 questions beyond these 2 that we're doing in class. I want you to pick 4 more, not 8, 4 more that you really feel you could write about, meaning you can find examples, you have thoughts that you want to say to me, and those 4 answers are not due Thursday, they're due Monday. So I expect a round of applause at that point. All right, so I'll repeat. In the next 14 minutes, I want you to pick another question that really gets to your heart that you want to write about. Use the same method you just used with your partner. In other words, 3 examples, some thinking. It's due at 3 o'clock. And then for homework, look at the remaining 8 questions and pick only 4 that you want to write about, that you feel that you can really write something. And within each one, again, I want 3 examples. I want your thoughts, and I want that sent to me by Monday. Any questions?
Yeah, Professor.
Yeah.
Sorry, my question's kind of, oh no, sorry. I was wondering if instead of my 4 questions due next Monday, right? Could I just add this question to that 4 because I have to go to work right after this.
Well, give me 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Try it, do as much as you can in the next 10 minutes and send me the answer to this next question, and then the other 4, send them by Monday.
Okay.
All right. All right. Anybody else have a question? Okay.
Professor, this is Arbaz. I just have one question. When you say 3 examples, are those like direct quotes from the text when you say examples, or can they be reworded in our own words, but then we put a citation? Does that also count as an example?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Other questions? All right, I'm going to stay here and be quiet, but as you're writing and as you're doing your work, feel free to ask a question and go.